Hello. Okay, we are back, and thank you for your patience. We had a little bit of technical difficulty, but we are now back and ready to go with our second talk in this track. And this talk is called A Pedagogy for Engineering Concepts, focusing on experiential learning. Definitely a very, very timely topic about experiential learning and doing that in engineering. And we have with us our speaker, who I see is all online, Dr. Kanmani Budi. And I would like to welcome you to introduce yourself and start the talk. Thank you so much for joining.
So, good morning. Here we are on the second day of the Learning Ideas Conference in track 7. And we have the session chair as Dr. Kinga Petrovai. I'm fortunate to have such a experienced person with diverse areas of experience as the session chair. And this is my talk. The talk is titled A Pedagogy for Engineering Concepts Focusing on Experiential Learning. And here it's I'm trying to walk through the journey of having taught courses in undergraduate engineering and how the pedagogy evolved over the years. A brief about myself. I'm working as a professor in the Department of Electronics and Telecommunication Engineering in BMS College of Engineering, Bangalore. And I've held the positions of Dean Academics and the head of the department. Recognized evaluator by the National Board of Accreditation. Published a book on effective implementation of outcome-based education leading to accreditation, and these are some of the other activities that I have engaged in. Now, coming to the session outline, I'm trying to give a brief introduction, and the most of the talk is going to be focused on a personal journey, emphasized mostly on 4-year series. And later on, I'll demonstrate the method adopted for teaching concepts like sampling theorem and central limit theorem, and eventually present the details of the survey that the students have taken and some concluding remarks. The most of my experience has been in teaching courses that are either in the domain of signal processing or communication, analog signal processing, digital signal processing, signals and systems, analog communication, digital communication. Sometimes I have taken certain other courses. And these courses involve concepts. Most of the concepts are usually highly mathematical and difficult to visualize, and it becomes difficult for students to truly comprehend the concept. And certain concepts that I've listed here in these courses that we teach, we have convolution, the impulse response, the sampling theorem, the Fourier series, Fourier transforms, and all. So I'm going to commence with the pedagogy that I have usually adopted in my teaching career. And as mentioned, significant focus will be on Fourier series. I select this topic because this is common to most branches of engineering, and it's also taught by the in mathematics course as well. Hence, most faculty will be able to identify themselves with the Fourier series. That's the reason I focus on this concept or the topic of Fourier series. My career in the college, BMS College of Engineering, is since 1995. However, my teaching this concept and this journey that I'm sharing is since 2006. Prior to that, I was handling a wide spectrum of courses, and I was also pursuing my PhD. So the usual pedagogy that I have adopted over the years is if given a topic or the topic that I desire to deliver, it starts with the formal statement. As the first step, we write the topic, or we tell this is the topic we're going to cover, and then we give the formal statement of the of the topic. And then this is followed by the mathematical equation that gives a representation of Fourier series. And later on, we'll proceed with mathematical proof. Proof of how exactly we are able to represent any periodic signal as a summation of infinite sum of sinusoidal signals and their harmonics. This we give proof the error in representation when we truncate it to a finite length sequence, and this is then followed by numerical examples. So we take up a simple periodic signal and then go through the entire process of trying to obtain the Fourier series representation of the given periodic signal. Later on, we design certain laboratory experiments to take the student through understanding the concept of Fourier series. And this sequence that happens, if we can identify that a normal Fourier series example, if we start and try to obtain the coefficients, it runs into 2 or 3 pages of integration and computing the values. And typically a student will take around 30 to 40 minutes minimum to arrive at the result, provided he or she has gone through the steps perfectly without making any error. And in this entire process of from start beginning of the statement to the actual going to the laboratory implementation stage, it's likely that we have gone through around 2 weeks of time, and it's before the student goes to implement in the lab. And this is then followed by assessment. And if I take a typical assessment and say I give a student a question, like I give a periodic wave, a square wave, or a sawtooth waveform, and we ask the students to obtain the Fourier series representation of the signal. Because of going through a large number of examples in the class, and also certain examples which are given as homework or during the tutorial sessions, we do find that students are able to answer and arrive at the right answer. However, if I translate the same Fourier series into testing them on understanding the concept, if I change the assessment to, I give this as an input, I give a square wave or a sawtooth wave or a waveform as an input to an ideal low pass filter and pass it, what is the output? Only around 5% of the students could answer this question. And this is what has happened 2006, 2007, those early years of my teaching these concepts. And a typical question that, and this assessment happens in a formal exam, an internal assessment of the course, or also during the class interactions. If we ask the students, the number of students who really can answer is very less. The concept, understanding the true concept of Fourier series, that a periodic wave can be built by adding the sine wave of fundamental frequency and other harmonics with amplitudes as defined or as obtained by the Fourier series representation. This, despite sincere efforts in repeatedly telling the statements and going through the explanation, it was disappointing to note that the percentage of students who were really comprehending the essence was less. However, the students are able to compute the coefficients and arrive at the mathematical results. So, but then the students who were able to answer, maybe they have got good letter of recommendations and they're doing well. But I accepted it uh, as a, as a fact, and I accepted it as a case that yes, number of students who truly understand Fourier series is less. And I continued teaching this concept or any other concept of the course in a more very similar manner. Start with the theory, go through the derivation, do numerical examples, and then the laboratory component. Of course, as years progressed, maybe we introduced a laboratory component into the course. We try to design experiments using MATLAB. We also try to include experiments using LabVIEW and multisim. But the essential pedagogy of starting with theory and going through numerical examples in the lab, that continued. And then now moving ahead to 2009. 2009, some few instances happened in this teaching phase, and in the first memorable moment is meeting a personal meeting with Professor Simon Haken. And as I mentioned, most of the courses in my teaching career has been in signal processing, analog digital signals, and analog and digital communication. And as a student, I have taken courses on analog communication, digital communication. As a student, my professors referred to the books written by Professor Simon Haken, and that went into my teaching career as well. And my entire teaching career is based on significantly referring to the books written by Professor Simon Haken. And I couldn't believe my joy, or I can't express the joy that I went through when I realized that Professor Simon Haken was also in the conference, and it's a moment that I share, a very dear moment uh, that I recollect. In the same year, 2009, another significant activity happened in this journey of my teaching career, and the Indo-US US collaboration for engineering education was established in 2008. However, I got to associate with this initiative in the year 2009, and they bring a lot of global experts to our classrooms. They bring global experts to the campus, and they conduct a series of academic events for the benefit of students as well as the faculty. And my personal significant component in this association with IUCA is my opportunity to have attended a 1 week course on advanced signal processing by Professor Sidney Burris of Rice University. Sad that we lost him in April 2021. But I realized that signal processing has the same concepts. And what touched here was the way Professor Sidney Burris took us through the course. He taught the concepts of advanced signal processing, but he also ensured that there is a story that goes with the concept, or with the design of a filter, like how the FFT was designed. He took us to the actual story, the story of the researcher, the students who were involved in developing the algorithm. And he also shared other moments that helps us in our career, in our teaching career. Now, this, in addition to the core knowledge that we gained through the course on advanced signal processing, a specific importance that I recollect today is that he introduced us to cnx.org. And he said content can be uploaded on this platform under the Creative Commons license, and this can be then shared with the students. And there's one more concept that he introduced us to, and that was the IEEE Signals and Systems Concepts Inventory. These are two key takeaways through attending that 1 week program that happened in 2009 at Mysore. And based on his suggestion, took the immediate step of trying to upload certain modules in the courses that I teach, that is signal processing and communication, and uploaded the content. And they have few modules have good popularity index. And the second initiative that he introduced us to was the Signals and Systems Concepts Inventory. And so we looked into it, and when we send a mail to Professor John Buck or to Professor Kathleen Page, we get access to the 25 questionnaire, and we can conduct the test for our students. So based on that interaction, we try to include this IEEE SSCI questionnaire as one of the internal assessments in the course I was teaching. So for the signals, continuous time signal processing, we had the continuous time test. And it was a course on discrete time signal processing, we had access to the discrete time questionnaire. And so this helped us realize where we stand in the signal processing community, and how effective is our teaching, and how effective are we able to convey the concepts to the student. And it's interesting to note that the questionnaire is framed so well that it would not require remembering of a formulae, but all that it requires understanding the concept, of signal processing. And typical scores that we got then was a maximum out of this 25 was around in the range of 16 to 18, and the class average was around 10 to 12. But that is how this test stood at. And then I realized, okay, there is a need to improve further in the teaching method that I'm following. And of course, here I would like to mention that I had the opportunity to meet both Professor Kathleen Wage and Professor John Buck during the conference in 2011. Moving further, the next year in 2010, the same the faculty development program on advanced signal processing was now conducted in different location, and it was conducted in Bhimbaram. And here, the session by Professor Sidney Burris, I had the opportunity to handle 2 sessions in between, and I handled the sessions on wavelet transforms. And similarly, during the 2010, there was another session on digital signal processing using LabVIEW by Professor Mark Yoder of Rose-Hulman University. Again, a 1-week faculty development program through the IUCE. And this happened in Vijayawada, and I handled few sessions on conducting analog and digital communication experiments using the LabVIEW platform. And in particular, it's interesting to note that Professor Mark Yoder conducted the test, the IEEE SSCI test for all the participants. All faculty participants took the test. He said it was part of a global, huge project that he's conducting. He just wants to assess the signal processing knowledge of various faculty in different regions. And as part of that, took the test. And yes, I recollect having scored full marks in that assessment. Then this IUC initiative also introduced us 2 sessions by Professor Richard Felder and Professor Rebecca Brent, who took us through pedagogical initiatives. And that was the first time I was hearing the word pedagogy, and the first time I'm attending some sessions where they say that we need to engage with the students, we need to get into activity-based teaching, and we cannot be a person on the stage who continuously delivers the session. It was the first time got introduced to, though it was very interesting to attend and listen to the session. I must acknowledge here that I did not put efforts in actually translating the learning from these the sessions by Professor Richard Fedler and Rebecca Brent into actually incorporating changes in my delivery pattern. All that I realized is there is a need to change, but I did not put in significant efforts. And so if I were to summarize, in 2009 onwards, the association with IUCE and attending the training programs made me realize, or we enhanced the type of assessment, realized there is a need to change the pedagogy, and we enhanced the quality of our sessions, and also tried to contribute modules on cnx.org. And then moving further, we introduced small changes in the course content, maybe in the type of laboratory sessions being conducted, but it was not a drastic change. Small changes in the performance of the students. In 2000, moving forward, 2014, something significant happened in India for engineering education, and that is the Washington Accord. The Accord, which is an international agreement between bodies responsible for accrediting engineering programs. India was recognized as one of the signatories with full rights of participation. So, and India being represented by the National Board of Accreditation. So this was a huge step in for engineering education in India, and there was a need to understand outcome-based education and implement outcomes-based education. And the National Board of Accreditation, they conducted a lot of training programs, in person, online training, or blended mode. And the significant efforts went into training the faculty of the country in outcomes based education. And the association with the IUCE took us, and this National Board of Accreditation and OBE all culminated in one step further in the year 2015. Our college, the BMS College of Engineering, having the opportunity to host the conference that was on transformations in engineering education. And of importance here is we had a lot of academic experts from across visit our campus, number of sessions, but in particular, in view of the India becoming a member of the signatory of the Washington Accord, one of the pre-conference workshop was on outcomes-based education, wherein we had sessions by Dr. Raman Unnikrishnan, who was a mentor for our NBA. And we also had a session by Dr. Michael Milligan, the executive director of ABIT. So these are some instances that that made us think significantly in the need to adopt outcomes-based education. So this change or this step in the country resulted in our need to define course outcomes, mapping the course outcomes to the program outcomes, designing suitable assessments. We started including assessments that included course seminars. We included assessments that included course projects. And we also tried to include experiments designed by students. Earlier, it was always faculty designing the experiments, but here, when this outcome-based education when we started implementing, that we did witness a change in the type of assessment because we had to address all the outcomes defined by the National Board of Accreditation. However, we continued with our model of theory, tutorial, and laboratory sessions as per the timetable, and we brought in small changes in the delivery method, and we tried to bring in huge changes in the assessment model. This continued for a few years, and if we try to measure the we continued with the usual pedagogy, and we found marginal increase in the performance of the students, but not a significant step ahead. And then moving ahead to 2020, the pandemic is something that brought in huge change in the complete teaching learning process. And here what happened was, first there was a need there was a need to shift into an online mode of teaching, and the first step was to select the platform for online teaching. And here our association with IUCE, we were used to attending webinars, and we had class experts from various experts from various countries who would deliver talk lectures, and that were coming to our students in the classroom. And the platform the IUC was using was GoToMeeting. So without any second thought, we in our department, we decided to go ahead with GoToMeeting as the platform for our online teaching. And here I take this opportunity to acknowledge the team, the GoToMeeting, because they extended a special COVID package to our institution. And so the major task of identifying the platform for online delivery was easy, and we were able to adopt to the tool. And then, having selected the platform, we tried to invite the students, and then somehow we realized that there is a need to make exactly like what I am presenting now. There is a need to make a PowerPoint presentation, and so there. I mean, the course that I teach is mathematical signals and systems, digital communication. Lot of equations, lot of figures, and lot of plots that we come out. So then, to handle a 1 hour session, it would typically take around 5 6 hours minimum to type the equations, to create the figures either in MATLAB or any other programming environment, insert them and put into the PPT, and then deliver. So it was huge task before the start of a session, and after making a PPT of 40 50 slides, it would all get over in time and before time, and then we wonder how to really take the class through a longer duration. And at the end of it, it's painful to note that the student feedback was, please do not use the PPT. And though we like to take feedback from the student, receiving a negative feedback was not easy to accept. However, with the student said, you may be taking a lot of time in preparing the PPT, typing the equations, but we do not get the feel of a real classroom, the feel that you are teaching in the classroom. And so, with giving respect to the student opinion, then we decided that PPT is not a mode of communication for continuing for the type of courses that I was handling. And then we got the digital board and the pen, and this made it easy. It was like walking to the classroom with the chalk exactly set. I have the online platform, I have my board and pen, and I scribble, I write with my hand. And then this was a simulation of the actual classroom, and the student liked this mode of teaching. And it was surprising that this was an outcome through the journey that we are walking and switching over to the online mode. And then, as mentioned, our courses, we already had a lot of laboratory experience included, so that the students can understand the concepts better. And then there was a need to explore the use of online platforms. So then we switched to MATLAB Online. Proved extremely handy because we were able to share the MATLAB students with, since we had the campus wide license, the students were able to access to the tool from home. For circuit simulation, we use the Multisim Live. Both we were able to, with this platform, we were able to continue our teaching. And here I would like to emphasize that though we had some initial learning experience, and after a few months into the journey with feedback and corrective action, I would like to emphasize here that the teaching learning process continued without any disruption because of the online mode. In fact, though the gap between the in self-motivated and not self-motivated student increased, but the motivated students, they self-motivated students, their learning was higher. We enjoyed the teaching experience in the online mode. So from 2020, the pandemic time, we saw a huge change in our teaching. We switched to online mode of teaching, of course, and we also tried to use open source tools, and we migrated to Python out of necessity in between. And of course, we continued using the Multisim Live. And here, the most significant change that happened in this journey or during the pandemic was, earlier we had lectures, tutorials, and practicals, rigid boundaries. Like if I pick up a timetable, my timetable will have clearly how many lectures, the number of tutorial hours in a week, and the practical sessions. And our class size is usually around 60, and our tutorial batches are of 30, and the laboratory batch is around 15. So a faculty handles the lecture, and the faculty handling the tutorial may or may not be the same faculty. It could be the same faculty handles twice the tutorial for 2 batches. And similarly, the practicals may or may not be handled by the same faculty. These boundaries existed. And the online mode of teaching, because we adopted the open source tools, and which did not have a limitation of the size, we were able to conduct the class, the laboratory for the whole class. So the most significant change that happened was the collapse of the rigid boundaries between the lecture, tutorial, and practical. And because of this collapse, the faculty who was handling the theory is able to handle the tutorial and also handle the practical for the whole class. And because of this collapse in the boundary between the lecture and the practical, there evolved a pedagogy. I need not have a separate lab session. While I teach a formula or I teach a concept, I can take the students through a laboratory experience. And so what I did during the time was this collapse in boundaries. I realized that let's take the students to the experience first. So I designed an experiment to comprehend 4-year series. First, I do not tell them 4-year series. I just design the experiment. The students conduct the experiment. We walk through the journey together, and then make the observation. And the observation they make is what we are driving at towards 4-year series. And then they come out with the student statement is very similar to the 4-year series statement that I make. And once this laboratory experience is completed, the student has seen that I can add different sinusoidal signals of different harmonics with suitable weights as I give, because I'm designing the experiment. And they realize that we add and then we get a square wave. Similarly, they add, I give another equation, or I design another experiment, they add and see that adds to a half wave rectified, full wave, so he observes that addition of harmonics, sinusoidal harmonics with suitable weights can really lead to a desired periodic signal. And this experience, when students have gone through, is then followed up with the formal statement, the mathematical proof, and numerical examples. So this change in pedagogy to experiential learning happened because of the collapse of the boundaries between lecture, tutorial, and practical. And then when we have a similar assessment to assess the concept, what we found was even the concept-based questions, a huge jump in the number of students who were able to answer. And as against the earlier 5% who could answer the concept-based, here it was a tremendous jump. And we had 60% students who could answer the question. So, and of course, the code is shared. When time doesn't permit, and then we'll walk through these examples. So this is the code and the results. So the student can run any example for the number of harmonics that they decide to have, and they observe the periodic wave that is generated by adding the number of harmonics. And for some students who are not so comfortable with the programming environment, some students are more comfortable with discrete components. And so we thought we'll also have the Fourier series experience through an operational amplifier, a simple adder circuit. And this again is available on the link is here. So anyone can share with the students. We build the circuit in the online platform collectively together, and they see the output, they get the output, they share their output to us, or sometimes they take a photograph and share it through the mobile. But the classes eventually became highly interactive as a real classroom. So this was another experiment, and they appreciate the Fourier series. And we also, to have further understanding of the concept, we just designed a filter, a 4th order Butterworth filter, and we have the signal generator, the periodic waves, pass it through the filter and see the output. And these are the results when the frequency is low and the frequency is high, based on only the fundamental gets passed through. So irrespective of what periodic wave I give, always I get a sine wave if my periodic signal is close to the cutoff. And then if I reduce the frequency, I get the complete periodic wave as such. These are experiments they conduct, they observe, and hence the retention is higher of the concept. Now I will skip. So similar method of experiential learning was used for sampling theorem. Another concept which is again very difficult for students to comprehend. Just I'll go through the experiment that we have designed for the sampling theorem. Here I had to use discrete component. We have used the LF398 IC to generate the sampled output, and then I have a filter. I keep changing the order of the filter to see how I can recover my signal back from the sampled output. And the reason I have to use a discrete actual implementation in the lab is somehow the multisim live platform is not having the component LF398, and hence I'm not able to generate this experiment in the simulation circuit simulation tool. So we have implemented in the laboratory. This is the equipment that we have used: the signal generator, the Tektronix 4-channel scope, and we have generated the sample waveform. And so this is our sample circuit, and then the fourth order filter. So when we use the first order filter, I have the filter for recovery, and I have the sample. I have a signal. I have the sample signal, and then the recovered output. I make my sampling frequency as high as 70 kilohertz for a message signal of 1 kilohertz, and I get some output, not so good. And when I reduce my sampling frequency to say 20 kilohertz, as can be seen in figure C, the output is highly distorted. Now I change my recovery filter to a second order Butterworth filter, and on changing my filter to the second order, now I have a reasonable good recovery of my original signal from the sample signal with the frequency of 20 kilohertz. And when I reduce my sampling frequency to say 8 kilohertz, my recovery with the second order filter, as can be seen in figure C, it's not satisfactory. Now I move to a third order filter, and what we find is in the third order filter with the sampling frequency of 12 kilohertz for a message of 1 kilohertz, I'm able to get a good reconstruction, and a poor reconstruction with the 5 kilohertz sampling frequency. And then when I move further to the fourth order filter, I am able to have the sample signal and a reasonably good recovery. So the student now concludes that the sampling theorem is perfect, and in order to be able to prove the sampling theorem, we need to have filters of the right order, and then we can and in case we do not have a good filter, he also sees how the distorted wave appears. So I think similar experiential learning method we use for central limit theorem as well, but this I will skip. The student goes through the code, he runs it. I just say take any sequence, do a repeated convolution and see if it tends to Gaussian. And then can you tell when it doesn't tend to Gaussian? And the students say if I have any negative value in my sequence, it doesn't tend. It is by observation the student arrives. So later on, when we introduce the students to central limit theorem, they relate very well to the concept. Now, having presented this experiential learning, so the idea is to take the students through an experience in the laboratory, maybe in the lab using components or using a simulation suitable engineering tool, the Python or the MATLAB. And once he or she conducts the experiment, draws upon the conclusion, we then take the student through the related theory, and this we feel has led to enhanced number of students understanding the concept. And so we conducted a survey, and though I expected full participation, we have a number of students from the second year, because they were my students then, and the third and the final year had already taken the course earlier. So the percentage of those students is less, but this is how the statistics of students taking up the survey. And we had a lot of questions. I've just put few sample questions here. But most of the students have recommended the use of experiential learning for teaching a concept, as opposed to the conventional method of first going through the theory and then the laboratory experience. And another question was regarding whether we need to have the same teacher handle the theory and the lab. And as can be seen, most of the students preferred the faculty handling the theory, and the lab is similar. Certain other suggestions that evolved, they put here in the survey. I've just picked up few and included. Of course, students are aware that their survey results will be used for presentation, and their name and identity will not be disclosed. Prepared a video, and of course it's uploaded in the material along with the materials, and anyone can watch the video wherein we try to get the student opinion on the method of teaching, the experiential learning method of teaching that we have adopted. Now, coming to the conclusions, as a faculty today, I would like to consciously adopt the method of experiential learning, and I would not like to start off with the theory. I would like to take the students through the experience, and then arrive at the concept, and then go through the theory. So I will list the key concepts of the course, and then I will take them through this method, and then only take them through the content, and not in a sequence as is normally I have been following. This is one change that I am making in my teaching. Similarly, I would like to handle, like earlier, I used to handle the theory, and because I was also holding certain administrative posts, I while designing the lab, I saw to it that some of my faculty colleagues may handle certain lab sessions or the tutorial. But today, I feel that based on the student survey and the feedback and the effectiveness of the same faculty handling, I would like to ensure that I handle all the labs and all the tutorials associated with the course, so that there is a sync in the type of the notation, and there's a close connect between what is taught in the theory and what happens in the tutorial or the laboratory sessions. And since we have the option of continuing with the tool, even though we are out of the pandemic and we're back to classroom teaching, we can still explore the possibility of having the whole class take the lab sessions wherever the facilities and infrastructure permits. And it is just a wish list that I have, having gone through this journey. I was just thinking, why do we have this bifurcation of this lecture, tutorial, and laboratory? And then when I look into it, then we have our guidelines. We have the need, when we frame the curriculum shall have lectures, tutorial, and laboratory. And then the pandemic experience took us through the collapse of these rigid boundaries. So today I just wonder, is it possible that we can have curriculum with courses, and the course can have credits? And for example, a 3 credit course can have 3 to 6 hours of pedagogy per week, maybe. And in this pedagogy, the faculty can choose to have decide how many hours of lecture and tutorial or laboratory experience the faculty would feels it's for effective teaching. A 2 credit course may probably can have 2 to 4 hours of pedagogy per week. It is just a wish or is a desire, so that there is a collapse in the boundary. And when I look at my timetable, I have 1 course, I have 2 course, and I will not have I have a lecture in 1 course, I have a laboratory in another course, I have a tutorial in another course. This is not a timetable I would like to have. This is just a wish list. And now, coming to the acknowledgments, my sincere appreciation and acknowledgement to the anonymous reviewers who are so kind in suggesting the changes to be included in the paper, and the compared to the initial version of the manuscript and what has evolved through the suggestion is something I'm so glad that it has evolved for better, and I acknowledge the reviewers for taking me through this journey, and the continuous support at every stage by the conference team has been amazing. Their humility, and I used to ask so many questions and I would understand only half the instructions, and yet they were very kind and humble. Sincere acknowledgement to the support extended at every stage. Thank you so much. and association with the acknowledged National Board of Accreditation, because they have taken us through the outcome based journey, and the conference that they organize once every 2 years, the World Summit of Accreditation, again brought us with academic experts and interaction, and helped us improve the teaching learning process. And in particular, I have taken one course on data science and analytics, again an initiative by the government of India, wherein they realized the need for building technical power in the domain of data and analytics. And I have attended this course as a participant, 2 weeks course online. And through this online course in 2021, I I got introduced to both data science as well as Python. Both started from scratch, and the way they took us through the course is amazing. Acknowledge the team from IIT Gandhinagar for giving us that learning experience, that I'm able to use now Python for teaching signal processing concepts in my course. The college, BMS College of Engineering, was established in 1946 by the visionaries, late Sri B.M. Srinivasaya and B.S. Narayan, and in 1946, purely as a need to develop and contribute technical manpower to the nation. And today it is managed by the trustees and run the college functions with a well-defined vision and mission. And in the college, we have one of the department as Electronics and Telecommunication Engineering, which was established in 1986, and I'm one of the faculty in the department, which offers purely undergraduate engineering education in electronics and telecommunication engineering. So I'm happy to be proud of the BMS family, and I acknowledge every student that I have taught, my interaction with every faculty, and in particular acknowledge the management for providing a professional environment for growth. And these are the references that has taken me to through the making of the work. And thank you. Ready to take any questions.
Okay, thank you so much for sharing your insights and your work. That's very interesting. Are there any questions from online or in the room? Okay, I think there. So a very quick question for you is, if there was one piece of advice that you would share. You shared a lot of insights on how you created this experiential learning in engineering. More generally, in order to help students prepare for experiential learning, is there one piece of advice that you would offer instructors?
Yes. And while I have shared my personal journey, I feel that every course in the engineering curriculum does have few key concepts which is difficult to convey to the student. So I feel that this method of teaching, taking the students through an experiential learning, can be adopted by most faculty for most courses. Because it's often it happens that a person, one faculty handles the course and someone else handles the laboratory. This is something that we observe, uh, and I think that that can change. If that changes, I think it's going to lead to a tremendous improvement in student learning.
Wonderful. Well, thank you
Thank you.
very much. Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm sure your students have a wonderful experience with you, and they're lucky to have you. And it seems like a wonderful way to be learning. So, thank you for sharing that with us, and all the best to you in your future work, and sharing this with your students. This way of learning.
Thank
Thank
you so
you.
much.
All
Yes.
right. All the best.
And
Bye
acknowledge
bye.
the entire team from the Learning Ideas Conference for the opportunity and the support. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye bye.